and 20 years, we'll be talking about the second and third generation of kids that are being educated in micro schools and supportive homeschool co-ops and pods. So like, I want to be at the forefront of that revolution, so that I can say, like, this is a viable option 20 years from now. Here's how it was done. Here's how we can do it in a sustainable manner. And at that point, we are able to be influenced in our own, lobbying cohort, whatever, so we can begin to go to the same meetings that some of these people are going to in Washington, and we can influence ourselves. They can't, there should not just be one or two people at the table saying this is how it should be done and here's a whole bunch of money, make it happen. We are going to create a movement of parent, family driven, like, no, we're the real people. Your corporations, we are real people. Here's what we want. And we have the force you have to listen to us. And if you don't, then we're going to not elect you anymore.
Hello and welcome to Home Education Today. Today, my guest is Michelle Person, and she is doing something. She's a pioneer in alternative education, and I wanted to introduce her to you, to my audience, so that she could give us some of her experience and help us to know how to proceed when you are making a career change in education. So, Michelle, I'm going to turn it over to you, and just tell us tell us about yourself a little bit and your story and what you'd like others to know.
So cool. So my name is Michelle, like you said, and I am a veteran educator or master educator, whatever term you want to throw out there. I've been doing this education thing for over 20 years. I began my career as a Teach for America teacher. For those of you who don't know, Teach for America is a program that invites non-education majors to agree to teach for 2 years in an underserved area, either a rural school or an urban school where the need for teachers is often the greatest. You spend 2 years giving back. What actually happens is some people leave and never teach again, and some people make careers out of it. And though it was not my intention to be here 20 years later, but that's a whole other podcast on a whole other episode. But here I am 20 plus years later, and I've gone from being an elementary teacher to being a building principal, and now I am a school founder. I'm opening my own micro school this coming August. So we are opening our doors on August 15th, and I'm super excited. And a little bit about
and where are you? Where are you located? So people.
I'm located in Dayton, Ohio. We're in Dayton, Ohio. Mm-hmm.
And you have a website. You have ways people. So we'll cover that at the end. So.
Okay. So basically, a little bit of the background beyond that is, as I started on my education journey, I was very frustrated a lot of times that with the level of progress I was able to see that kids would make in my classroom, only for them to leave the next year, go back into the chaos of the school. And what you learn very quickly as a teacher is not everybody runs their classroom the way you run your classroom. So students that would experience great successes and we would make great progress in my classroom, the next year would come and I would see them in the hallways or, talk to other teachers in the teacher's lounge or see them in the office. And I'm like, why are you doing this? Like, this wasn't your behavior last year, or you made so much progress. And it's just not everybody runs their classroom the way you run your classroom. And you need to run your classroom, honestly, as a very specific way to reach a certain demographic kid. And if you don't run your classroom that way and you haven't built relationships and, they don't trust you and love you, and if you don't know your pedagogy and all that, like it's chaos. And so I said, oh, you know what? That's cool. I will just go higher up into the chain, and I will make a school where everybody runs it the way that I've experienced success, and I'll help coach people, and that way the kids will be able to experience this throughout their stability throughout their entire educational career. But what you find out as soon as you enter into anything that goes higher up in the chain is that the higher up you go, the less power you have. Like I tell people all the time, I had a lot of times more power as a lowly second year teacher, just being able to go inside my room and close my door and just pretend like the state didn't exist and pretend like the principal didn't exist. And we would close ourselves off in our room and we would do our thing. And the higher up you go, you're held more accountable. Your name's everywhere. Like my name was on all these state websites and report cards, and you just can't do that. Like the higher up you go, the more bureaucracy there is and the less freedom that you have. And so I just became really, really jaded and really, really frustrated that I was in this to try to make a difference in the lives of kids. And it just, I was being stifled at every turn. And so I said, you know what, I'm gonna take a second and pause and step outside of it. I was trying to reform a system from within for a very long time, and said, you know what, I'm just going to create, I can't. So I'm going to create my own system.
Right. And you were teaching, where were you teaching during these years?
So I've taught all over. I've taught in Newark, New Jersey. I've taught in Cleveland, Ohio. I've taught in a small suburb here in Dayton and Yellow Springs, Ohio. So I've taught in suburban schools. I've taught in urban schools. I've taught in high performing urban schools, low performing urban schools, high performing suburban districts. I've taught all over. So, I think for me, with all of the different cities, I've taught in Columbus and Cleveland and Newark, New Jersey, and Dayton, Ohio. And for me, the constant is the situations don't change. It's the people that change. And unfortunately, the policies are stupid. So you're stifled in what change you can make. So, I've taught a couple of different places and seen probably every facet, of education that one can imagine. And it really does come down to the fact that, the people who make decisions about education are not educators. The people who make the rules that we have to follow, the people who make the laws, the people who create the standards, the people who design the textbooks, none of them they don't have an education degree. They've never been inside of a classroom. They have no idea. They have no understanding of what the childhood development looks like and how to best, make sure that children are able to thrive. It's about lobbyists. It's about politicians, trying to get elected. It's about textbook companies trying to make money, and it's not about kids and what's best for them. And so I just decided that I could no longer in good conscience work in that system anymore, and I had to get out.
Wow. There's this whole swath of parents that have no clue. They have no idea that this is the reality in the public schools. Mm-hmm. And why do you think, this is something that I've been trying to unravel, because I was a homeschooler for 25 years with my kids and grandkids. And I was seeing this 25 years ago. The system was not working for my kids who had different styles of learning that weren't being addressed, and just different problems. We just had a different set. And I don't want to use disability. I don't think they had, like a really glaring disability, but they just weren't making progress. I had a daughter going into 5th grade who still couldn't read. And I had been working hard with her for years, and nobody could answer that. That's just one example of some of the stuff we were going through. And I realized at the time exactly what you're saying. It's like, if a teacher can't help me, or if I had a son who had this great teacher in 4th and 5th grade, he'd had a miserable time up to that point. And then 4th and 5th grade, he had a great teacher that let him stand at his desk and kind of fidget while he was doing his stuff. And her classroom was very much kinesthetically based. Mm-hmm. And for him, that was perfect. But then he went into 6th grade. It was like a disaster again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I can't deal with this.
Yeah. Well, funny.
My daughter's coming up through the same ranks, she's just not. And then I had a son coming up from kindergarten, 1st grade. It's like, oh, I just can't do this anymore.
My son also, my son was diagnosed with ADHD, and I, for the longest time, like knowing the system and everything, I definitely didn't. I waited as long as possible to use medication as a tool to help him out. And I just remember his 6th grade teacher absolutely adored him, and absolutely that was his best year. His best year academically, his best year, behaviorally, because she understood and she intuitively made those accommodations and those adaptations to the classroom, and he flourished. And then he went to 7th grade, and I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And 7th grade
happening
again. So I completely get it. Like it's hard to find consistency.
And now it's even so much worse. The ADD is so much worse. The autism spectrum is so much worse. Mm-hmm. It's just so difficult. And yet parents don't seem to see what's happening, mm-hmm. and they don't. And I wish I could, I wish there was something I could say there's we need to look at alternatives to this system because there's no political will to change it. There's never going to be a political will
because
to
it
change
doesn't benefit them to
It
change.
does. That's right.
You know, to benefit students with disabilities. And there are very justified, the reason you get an IEP is because, and an IEP is an individualized education plan. And what that means is, if for those of you who are not familiar, because if you're homeschooling, you might not be familiar with the terminology, is that if you do suspect that something is wrong with your child in terms of like they have a delay or they don't, you know, they're not picking up things as fast as other kids, you can request that they be evaluated to see if there's a legitimate concern that's going on, a reason that's keeping them from this. And so the problem is that once they're identified, the cost of educating that student, if you know what's wrong, and you also, there's research to explain, okay, when a kid it exemplifies these types of things, these are the methods that help them. Those methods are not cheap. And so, you know, it means that it becomes more expensive to educate that student. So for me, what frustrated the heck out of me is we would get told, well, you know, there's this push. You don't want to over identify kids because then they get into the system and they can't ever get out and blah, blah, blah. And they're, again, whole nother episode. But you know, the reality is when you are dealing with certain demographics of kids, based on their life experiences and what we know about these demographics, these areas, you should almost expect to over-identify them because there are very real things that occur and do not occur that make them unable to be able to perform at the insane, like, you know, mental gymnastics levels that they're being asked to. And so you have to account for that. But when you're then telling me, so I am a steward and I'm a part of my active community and I've read the research and I know the data and I'm like, oh, okay, so this trend is because of these factors. These factors exist in the neighborhood that I'm serving. Therefore, ergo, it makes sense that the children that I'm seeing will have these deficits. Therefore, we now need to make sure we are giving them the proper tools to be able to combat it. But the state says, screw all that data. You know, no, only a certain amount of population in any school district should be labeled as needing assistance. Well, what does that mean? That means that we don't identify kids that need support. We put the blame back on the school district and the teachers, and when really it's, can we look at their environment? Can we look at the things can we look at the social programs and the policies that you guys have put in place that are directly affecting why they are coming to me like this? No, can't do that because I don't have any money to lobby. And so what happens is then the pressure gets put on you to not give kids the help that they need, or to push them through, or to ignore red warning flag signs. And it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy because then these same people want me to pull out my miracle wand and turn all this water into wine when the state test comes. And they want me to, like, you know, here's some Aquafina. It's the best Aquafina in the world, but I'd really like some rosé. I'm not going to give you any money, any grapes to make this Aquafina into rosé, but I want rosé. And if you don't give me rosé, I'm going to put your name on a big, huge website and tell everybody that you failed as an educator. I'm going to suspend your school's license. I'm going to make you go through all these extra training courses because I gave you water with no grapes and told you to make rosé. What?
Super amazing analogy. That is an amazing, great analogy.
I love Aquafina, but it doesn't always quench your thirst. Sometimes you need some grapes.
Sometimes you just need a glass of wine.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, you're describing exactly what happened to my granddaughter. My daughter, who didn't read till she was 12 and then ended up at community college at 15 and graduated with honors. Her daughter, same problem, but she had some severe depression going on, and the IEP just never came through. We finally had to pull her from school because it was meeting, and then it was months before somebody would answer an email, and my daughter sending emails. I mean, it just went on for like 3 years, and she never did get her IEP. Yeah, it never happened. They'd say, "Well, go try this. Well, go try that." And I guess it's because they didn't have the money for another kid,
or they didn't want to. Once you put them on an IEP, what happens is you have to follow that IEP because it is law. And if you don't have if you don't have the money or the services available, like a lot of charters, unfortunately, when a kid, that's why you see a lot of kids go to charters, but then they come back after they come back to private, they don't have IEPs anymore. Well, the charter transitioned them out because the IEP required resources that the charter couldn't give. And if we don't give, then you're in violation of the law. So if we say you transitioned off your IEP, then we don't get in trouble. The kid doesn't get what they need. The supports, the mandated supports to make the kid successful are not gone. The charter, which has a little bit more freedom, is able to say, this isn't the right fit for you. Then you have to go back to the public school where they're like, why doesn't this kid have an IEP? And then you have to start the whole,
process over. She did. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. She started it in the private school. She went to the charter, and like you're saying, the charter couldn't give her what she needed. And for her to go back in her emotional state to the public, it just wasn't going to happen. It was not going to be good for her. So that's when we took her out. And over 2 years, just this last fall, we were in a small pod. And this is the power of these small schools. Anyway, we were in a pod, and they spent the whole year on Shakespeare. That's all they did. And in this particular group we were in, and she performed not an abridged version, not a dumbed down version, but an actual 2 Men of Verona Shakespeare play, all memorized, understanding what she was saying. That's the power of more hands-on, working hand in hand with an educator, small group. Yeah. From not reading to Shakespeare in 2 years.
Yeah.
It's flat out amazing what these kids can do if they have the right situation. And that's what you're going to provide. So
that's my goal.
Yeah. What is your tell us about your school? What is it going to provide and focus on and so forth?
So Tulsa, it's called the Tulsa Learning Center. I purposely didn't call it an academy or a school because I want people to understand that this is a different type of learning environment. Tulsa stands for the Teamwork, Unconventional Leadership, Service, and Action. It's also a nod to the excellence of Black Wall Street, which was a very prosperous community in Greenwood, Oklahoma, at the turn of the century that is no longer with us for a variety of reasons. And so the goal there is I have a couple of focuses, and my one focus is I'm a psychology major. That actually was my major in undergrad. And when you do anything with Piaget and you understand the levels of development that children go through, you understand that these tests that these kids are being asked to take, you understand that the expectations that are in these classrooms are not developmentally appropriate. And so my first thing is I want to create a developmentally appropriate classroom, a school where kids are being asked to do tasks that are developmentally appropriate to them. You should not be asking a 3-year-old to be able to write their name. They should not be using a pencil at 3 years old, just because they're in a Head Start program, to be tracing all day long, because they don't have the manual dexterity. They literally, if you can x-ray a 3-year-old's hands, their bones, their hands do not look like ours. So to force them to do something that they are developmentally not ready to do is insanity. That's why you're going to get, it's insane. So,
right. And that's just the physical part of it. They don't care about, most kids that age have no interest. No, they don't care about that kind of thing. I mean, they may doodle and stuff, and that's fine, but it's only for a few minutes, right?
Yeah. It's not to have they have to learn how to write their name. They have to, no, that's not how it works. And so the first thing, the aspect or tenet of the school is I want to make sure that everything we do is developmentally appropriate. The second thing that is really important to me is the cultural responsiveness. And so it's really frustrating that children can go through school and there are large sections of history that don't get talked about. There are things that, again, educators who've never educated, get to look at what happened in our history, get to look at contributions that people have made to society, and a small group of people are making the decision of what gets shared for everyone, which then makes it very difficult for students of color to be able to connect in any meaningful sort of way to the information that is being shared with them, because they don't see themselves in it. And when you don't see yourself in something, and when it's not interesting to you, as adults, we shut off. So it doesn't make it just goes to stand to reason that if a child is not seeing themselves reflected in the information that's being taught, if they can't relate to it, they don't care. And so then it becomes, why do I want to learn this? What's the benefit for me? There is none. High roadblocks. Like it's, hi YouTube, hi TikTok. And so the goal is to make the content matter to them. As a principal, one of the things that happens all the time, and I have so many stories, is the minute that, money becomes tight, all the things that make up the whole child focus, all the things that are important to make sure that children don't learn in a vacuum. They don't learn in isolation. They need to be able to have experiences that allow them to practice what they're learning, apply it in real time.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
All of that gets cut out because everybody has to do rote memorization for these tests. So that means that music, which can help you apply math concepts, and art, which you can infuse with literacy, and like all these things that complement each other, they get cut out, and all you end up with is reading, writing, and math. And that is not what a child needs. More than that, I know myself personally. I couldn't draw, I couldn't, anything, but I loved acting. And my school had a play every year that we did. And you had to be good all year long, or you couldn't be in the play. And so my the whole year, my thing was, and they would remind you, if you want to be in the musical, we need to see that you can do this, this, and this. Well, guess what? I was okay. I want to make sure that I'm caught up in my studies, and my homework's not falling behind, and my behavior is great, because I want to be on that stage. I want people clapping for me. And so I want to make sure that I am giving you what you need, so you can give me what I need. But when you don't, and because in that way, and it was really therapeutic in a way. And it helped develop who I was in terms of like my love of literature, in terms of my love of performing, and all of that. But if we didn't have that at my school, I never would have discovered that side of my life.
Right.
And I am. And those are the first things that get cut. And so developmentally appropriate, culturally responsive, whole child focus, and then the whole small class sizes. Like there is not one study. Like you go to any college campus. My oldest daughter is doing college tours right now. And you know what they talk about at every single college tour? Yes, we're a large university, but we have that small town feel. Like, there'll be a couple of classes where you might be in a lecture hall, but let us tell you how we make sure that you can actually communicate with your professors, because it's important that that you're part of a smaller community. So tell me this, a place that charges you, and the amount of money that these schools are charging right now is absolutely crazy. My daughter's looking at schools where one of them, the tuition is $80,000, mid-sized school, whatever. But they're telling you, as they're selling you in the tour, because they want your dollars, here's how we're making sure that you get some one-on-one attention. So if they know this at the college level, where you're asking to spend tens of thousands of dollars, they understand that there has to be small interaction, intentional communities, and they're creating those things so that you would go there and spend your money. Why aren't we doing the same thing for our little kids? Because they know it's important. The colleges know it's important. So if they're not going to have 40 kids in a class, and they're not going to have you spend $40,000 a year to have 40 kids in a class, why would we put our kids, our babies, in classes that are funny story? My last year in the classroom before I transitioned into administration, on average that year, I had about 35 to 37 kids in my class. Like one day I think I had like 38 out, but in the district contract, rather than not cap my class or not have extra kids in my class, I just got what's called an overage for every kid every day that I had over the 25 in my class that I was supposed to have. I got extra money on my that was calculated, and I got a bonus check. It wasn't a bonus check. It's called your overage check at the end of the year. That year, now I will say I taught my butt off, but it was so difficult to really make, because I had 38 kids, one teacher and 38 kids. We went to Disney that year, like my family and I, because I had a great overage check. I took my kids to Disney World. But at the same time, the kids who were in that class, who experienced 38 kids in a class, I know I was not able to reach all of them. I couldn't.
Yeah, there's no way.
There's no way. And I was a good teacher.
Yeah. But and I don't care how extensive your education is, how extensive your training is. There is no possible way that you can be effective for every child. And that's why getting down to smaller groups, or even, people say, they don't want to take their kids out of the public school because they're not smart enough, or they don't know how to do it. And I don't have an education. I don't know how to teach. And I go, just the personal one-on-one that you have with your kids. Believe me, just that.
Makes
And
all the difference.
you can gain that. I mean, especially for younger kids, right? Especially for younger kids. You can gain that. You can figure, if you can read, you can teach a kid how to read. You can read up on how to do that and figure it out, and simple math and so forth, for sure. So one of the things I've been watching your ads. I looked at your website. I was very interested in your YouTube that you put on about the interest-based. And so I kind of want to talk about that a little bit, because a lot of people don't understand that concept either, that you teach from a place where the child is already engaged. Because you've been talking a lot about how ineffective skills-based teaching is.
Correct.
You just teach us a math skill, or you just teach a reading skill or a writing skill or whatever, and it's not meaningful. It's not meaningful to the student, so it's pulling teeth.
Right, very much so. So there's just different ways where you can, I mean, like you can teach. There are ways to teach. You can teach, let's say, like, begin. So one of the elements of a story, beginning, middle, and end. Like, a student should be able to retell a story from beginning to end, add details, all of that stuff. You can do that without the Dick and Jane Basil readers. You can ask a kid at the beginning of the year, what are your favorite topics? If they say, like, I like magic, or I enjoy reading stories about, I like nonfiction books. I like reading about whales, or I love dinosaurs, or I love mysteries. Great. So instead of using that really stupid Basil reader that a teacher did not create, that a textbook company created, that does not have any interest with them whatsoever, librarians are a homeschooler's parents' best friend. You go and you say, okay, let's do an interest survey. Let's find out what my kid likes to read. Then everything they read can be what they want. And within that, after you find out what they like, you can, okay, now that we've read this, now that we've talked about this, let's talk about what happened at the beginning of this mystery, the middle, and the end. We talked about the life cycle of a dinosaur, or the different periods of whatchamacallits. Where, like, what was the beginning, what was the middle, what was the end? What were the plot points? Like, when did the dinosaurs go extinct? What do scientists theorize was the reason? And like, and what evidence do we have? What prediction can you make of something? Like, you can do all of that.
Yeah.
Just
from any interest. From any interest.
Right. You can. Right. And so it's simple. It really isn't as hard as it sounds, but textbook companies have to make money. And so, and there has to be uniformity, so that because they don't trust teachers that's the other, no one trusts teachers to do anything except for carry guns. Again, that's a whole nother, like a whole nother topic. Like, you don't trust me to teach, but so you want to tell me everything I have to teach in the way that I have to teach. You don't have a degree. You didn't go to school for this, and you don't understand what kids like, but you want to tell me how to do it, and then get mad at me when they don't like it. Like when I'm saying, well, they don't like this, they're not interested in this. That's they won't read these books you're sending me. And you're like, they don't want to, just like figure out, here are some strategies, round table read and assign partners and do all these different, you can do all of that. They don't care if they don't care about the topic that they're it's very difficult to make them interested. Right. So we definitely do. So we're going to be asking the kids and listening to them and say, hey, what do you like? What do you like to learn about? Oh, well, I like cars. Well, we can learn. We can do science with cars. We can learn simple machines. We can do social studies with cars. We can talk about cars around the world. We can do
the history of cars, the science of cars, the design of cars, the colors of cars.
All of that can be done. And because you're doing it in a way in which the kids, they're interested, they're hooked, and they care. And once they care, hence, and you can apply that, then you get so much more out of them. And that's why your granddaughter was able to go from not being able to read to reading Shakespeare in 2 years, because the teacher, the pod that she was in, finally found something that she gave a darn about. Yeah. And they were able to create a plan around that. And then she was invested. And when you are invested, you're 50 zillion times more likely to excel.
Right. Yeah. And that's when I started. Of course, I don't have a college degree, and my parents were school teachers. And so I had kind of been a little bit in my life hearing all the problems going on in the public school. And I didn't have confidence I could do it, but I thought I have to do something. So that's kind of what I did with my family, even though I had a 13-year-old all the way down to, I was pregnant with my sixth child, and I had a 2 and a 3-year-old. And I thought, what can I do? And I, a daughter that wasn't reading. And so I sat him down and said, what do you guys want to learn about? Let's come up with stuff we want to do. And I found some really cool coloring books and then reading that I could do along with it. So I let them sit and color while I was reading, and then we'd have a discussion. And that's what our school was to begin with. Yeah. That's all I did, because the first couple of years I didn't. And then we did a little bit of math. I mean, I found wherever they were in math, which was my daughter, who couldn't read, was great in math. So she kind of rocketed with math, and the oldest son wasn't. I mean, we just kind of piecemealed it. And I learned over time, that's the magic of it, is really tapping into what they want to do. And if you're kinesthetic, give them a little kinesthetic thing to do at the same time. Bingo. It was that easy. And by the time, especially my younger ones that were brought up in the system, by the time they got to about 12, I wasn't doing anything. Homeschooling was them pursuing their interests.
Yeah. And that's what you
want. I did nothing. When people say, well, I can't teach algebra, and I don't, what about science? And I'm like, you won't have to do that. They'll find the resources. We live in the age of information, for crying out loud. You can learn anything on YouTube now, and they went off up to the community college at 15, and they just took off with they just made their own plans, and they just went and did it. And I didn't. Once in a while, gosh, I keep hitting my thing here. Once in a while, they would say, hey, can you proof this essay I have to do? And that was fun. And that's about all I did. Honestly, it was kind of crazy. I mean, if you bring your kids up with this love of learning, where you tap into their interests and set them free, that's so key to a great
And that's
education.
our plan. Our plan is to create, to show them information at the level at which they are, to make sure they recognize that they can see themselves in the information, to make sure we are exploring their interests, give them opportunities to apply what they have learned on a regular basis. And we're just going to create lifelong learners who want to do well. That's my master plan.
It's genius.
Whoever's
it's genius.
listening.
It's genius.
And in the brain, that's how I'm taking over the world. That right there.
It absolutely works. I've long thought, why isn't public education a smorgasbord? Why isn't it hundreds of choices for people to say, my kid is they're playing the piano at 3. My kid is doing computations in their head at 8, or my kid has no interest in anything academic. Why can't it be that we find a way to serve the kids where they are, to throw out grade levels, because grade levels don't work. I don't
monetize that.
Huh?
You can't monetize that, and you can't regulate that. If everybody is doing their own thing, then how can you say who's better than the other person? So like, I have to have a way in America. We're a very individualized culture. We have to have a way in America to be able to say who's better than who. We have to have a ranking. We have to be able to say who, and then using that ranking, we have to be able to decide who gets what resources. And if you do it in a more homogeneous, portfolio-based, interest-based way, well, who would get all the money? How do you determine what's more important? How do you determine who's the best? And you got to know who's the best. If you don't know who's the best, then you can't. Then just throw the whole system away.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Where do you think public education is going to go then? I mean,
I'm very nervous. I have to be the things going on in Arizona right now. On the surface, I've had conversations about this with different people. For those of you who don't know, in Arizona, they're saying that you don't have to have a teaching degree anymore to be a teacher in Arizona. You just have to be enrolled in a teaching program, or no, not even a teaching program. You just have to be enrolled in an institution of learning. So, and then as you continue to read the articles, what they say is what they're moving towards is the idea of moving towards the idea of adjunct teachers, meaning that teachers, because like now, again, talk about a model that did not really work or does not really work well with higher education. There's tons of studies where like moving away from the tenure track and higher education has made the prestige of being a higher level professor, one, more difficult, two, the wages, it just killed the wages. Like you could be a professor and you can't afford to live, there's because of the way that they've changed how you are employed at different, like you can be a professor, but you've got to have 3 other jobs too to supplement the fact that they're not going to pay you very well to teach these classes. And so what they're doing in Arizona is like talking about the idea of like, let's quit hiring highly trained professionals. Let's put them in, anybody can be a teacher. And when you're homeschooling, yes, anybody can be a teacher, everybody, but you can seek out the right tools and the needs of your kid.
That's your focus. Yeah.
Right. But like teaching is when it's done right, this is me speaking as an administrator who worked at high performing schools where kids were loved and they were caring and cultivated. When it's done right, when you have the money, and it's a trifecta, you have to have the right people, you have to have the right environment, you have to have the money and the resources to be able to do it effectively. When you do it right, kids can experience great success and great growth in those right environments as well. But the way in which they're trying to deconstruct the system right now, it's very scary, because there are going to be a lot of kids who are not able to find these small micro pods, whose families, for whatever reason, will not be able to homeschool because, it's not everybody can homeschool. I think everybody would probably like to, but not everybody is able to.
Right.
And then you're going to have these non-regulated systems where people are it's going to be crazy.
You talk about chaos.
Yeah.
But we know why this is happening, right? I mean, it's happening because the chaos is already, and teachers like you are going, I'm out.
I'm done.
I'm out. I can't regulate all the social, emotional stuff. And I can't do all that and teach academics and have huge classrooms and have no resources. They just can't do it all.
And so, and literally the answer is the exact opposite of what they're doing. What they're doing is say, okay, well, we're just going to deregulate it and then we're going to let everybody do what they want to do. No, the actual answer, in my opinion, is let's look at all like how do we fix and take off the burden of the teacher to be able to have to provide all those things? How do we give more resources to the schools to be able to all school is a microcosm of what's going on in our society. Yes. So why don't we address the issues in our society so that they don't have to be addressed in the schools by the teachers who, quite honestly, went to school to teach? At this point in my career, I can armchair diagnose a kid with about 3 different disabilities. I can armchair social work you through different agencies and social problems and tell you where to go. I can armchair, there's a lot of stuff I can armchair from my cereal box, my Cracker Jack box that you eat enough Cracker Jacks, you read enough, you read enough little things at the bottom, get enough decoder rings, you figure it out. So there's a lot of stuff that I can do because just by virtue of being in the system for 20 years, I'm not certified to do any of that. I figured it out through by walking through fire. And so what would be nice is, instead of making somebody, and most people after 2-3 years of that walking through fire, they're like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Why would I do this? Yeah.
This isn't what I signed up for. So why don't you allow me to do what I signed up for, but give me the supports to be able to say, this is my lane. My lane is to make sure that these kids have developmentally appropriate information placed in front of them. And my job is to make sure that they can all master it at the level at which they need to. Now, when I need you to help me with a family who's experiencing homelessness, when I need you to help me with the child who definitely has some more severe cognitive delays, when I need you, put the people in the school whose job it is to just deal with that. And then pay them well, pay me well and pay those other people well. And then we can have a safe school that doesn't need resource officers where kids aren't coming. But
there's just too many problems. That's the point. When you said it's a reflection of our society, it's a reflection of the dysfunctional families. It's a reflection of the substance abuse.
It's a reflection of all of that.
Of all of it. And the mental illness that's happening because of it. And I am like you. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing with our website, is because I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I've learned in the last year and a half, just really in the last 6 months, as I've done more and more research as to what's going on in the public school, I've discovered that I don't know if you've ever heard of OutSchool.
Yes.
OutSchool is going B2B.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going into the public school now. So all these teachers that aren't happening, the
Mm-hmm.
ones that are retiring and not being replaced because we're in a 20-year low of kids becoming teachers. Who would want to become a teacher?
Right.
And spend, like you're saying, your daughter's not going to go spend tens of thousands of dollars to become a teacher. Why would you do that? Nobody's
Mm-hmm.
going to do that. So
she wants to be a writer, so I
pretty
almost feel like it's just as bad. Like either way, she's gonna live on my couch. But continue.
But pretty soon you're just going to have computer monitors, and
Yeah.
your kid's going to be learning virtually at school.
And for little kids, like in a lot
it's
of
going to be a
situations,
disaster.
it's going to be an all absolute, and that's the problem. Like they're trying, basically what they're doing is they're putting, with all this deregulation, they're like, we don't want to talk about at all the real problem. Here's a Band-Aid. Go, like here, let's make it easy to do this, this, and this, and not even look at all of the issue. Like that way, it's a Band-Aid. And then we're gonna move on and do something else. Like it's very, very frustrating. It's scary. And what I'm trying to do and what I'm hoping to do is partner with like-minded people so that the way that history goes is it's cyclical. And so what's going to happen is, in my opinion, is exactly what happened with charters. And at the beginning of the charter movement, they threw money at charters, and you could do whatever you want to. And there was so much mismanagement and hundreds of thousands of dollars of state money across the country, where people just were given and could do whatever they want. Kids were just left by the wayside because it wasn't about what's best for kids. It's about how much money can we get. And so you have a generation of kids who went from failed charter to failed charter. Now, those charters that were run from the beginning with the right people, with the right mindset, with true intentions, those have been able to grow and flourish. But most of the charters that started out, I know in Ohio was a huge charter state. It still is. They've all disappeared. There's a couple of conglomerates that have maintained a hold, but the level of oversight now, the squeezing out of every dime that you get, it's a very different place than it was when it first started. They went from complete no regulation to complete over-regulation, which is why I don't want to do charter anymore, because it's not a place where you can then make any change. That's exactly what I feel is about to happen with the way that they're moving. They don't want to deal with the mess. So they're about to deregulate everything. It's going to be complete and utter chaos. Somebody's an investigative reporting team is going to do some big story 5 years from now about the millions of dollars of taxpayer money that's been spent unaccounted for. And then somebody's going to try to get elected and going to clean it up and they're going to overregulate what really right now just needs to be supported in a concise and, a way to say, here are some options, because we can't fix this, but here's what we can. But they're not doing it that way. They never do it that way. So it's going to be it's going to be horrible. It's going to be a complete crap show.
So what is the real solution here? Because I think I understand. I really believe that the real solution is, and you may not agree with me, but I really believe it's repealing compulsory education laws and getting the teachers unions out of the power structure, and getting the power back in the parents and making them responsible for their children. And I know we have a lot of dysfunctional families, and I know we have all these problems that you're talking about, but when we take that power out of the hands of parents and they drop their kids off at the curb and they don't pay attention to what's going on, and then they get a call, your child, is having disciplinary issues or whatever, and they go, hey, you better not suspend that kid because there's nowhere for them to go during the day. I mean, I know you have all these, I've had many of these conversations with teachers. And so when that power goes back in the hands, when it's your kid, people will, I believe in parents, I believe they will sit up in their chair and say, this is on me. I've got to make something happen here. Not everybody.
I go back and forth. It is very hard because I have worked in both schools with unions and I've worked in schools without unions. And I can tell you as a principal, the frustration because of the power of the union. The union makes it very difficult to do anything, in a lot of cases, the union makes it very hard to do what is right for children. That's just you. I mean, my union people can hate me. I had the pleasure of working with several, in one district I worked in, there's a union head at your school. I've had the pleasure of working with two that I can think off the top of my head, union leaders in my building that were like, would close the door and say, look, I am here for the kids. I'm not here for this grown-up BS, I want to do what's right for kids. How can we work together? But that does not always happen. And it becomes a lot of posturing and a lot of grandstanding, and it's very difficult to try to work through to do what's best for kids. On the other hand, I have also worked as a teacher and a principal at schools with no union. And the abuses that you see, the unions came together for a reason. Like the bottom line is that there is a reason they exist. And people get taken advantage of. There are unfair hiring, unfair firings, it is unrealistic work conditions, unsafe work conditions. Having worked on both sides of the spectrum, I don't know what the answer is.
I think I'm talking more about at the federal level, where there's so much influencing politics and policy from far away. Now, if you want to have a union in your local area, okay, because I get you. Again, it's the federal, it's what's coming down. That's why there's no real political will to change what's going on.
It's one of those things where the problem is like, I feel like people have, it's almost, I wish we could get to a point where even like our political system, and we were going off a little bit, like Democrat is this, and therefore if you're a Democrat, you must subscribe to every single thing here, and Republican is this, and if you're Republican, you have to ascribe to every single here. And it's very black and white. Real life is very gray. And the reality is, like, when I talk about those aspects of the teachers union, I wish we could get to a point where the word union didn't mean like this, and this, but then also influencing it this way. And I wish non-union didn't mean this, and this, but also this over here. Like it's very, very frustrating.
And we're just people, right? We're just human beings. We're just, so you're gonna get that all over the place thing going on, just with school boards and everything. I mean, we're just people. We're just human beings, and somehow
the idea that everything has to be an absolute it's a very, very scary thing, because that's where you get this. So this is a union, and the union provides these protections. So when you start talking about making it almost impossible to release a teacher, because that's not what's in best interest for students. When you make it so that you don't have to do X, Y, and Z, that's not what's best in the best interest for students. But when you're saying, like, for the longest time, the way that Ohio tried to fight, they tried to fight federally and with their influence, like, we don't want charters, boo, Hulk mad, why should they have a choice? There's only one way to do school. And eventually the charters were like, we're like, no, we're not backing down. There is not just one way to do school. And as a result, and what you're seeing is across the country, like all these places, they were able to bust up these hard, fast unions. And what happened was school districts that finally said, you know what, we can either keep complaining about whether or not they should or should not be able to do this, or we can look at the issues that they're having and the reasons why, and we can change our district to give parents the options and respond to the needs of the parents so that we can provide it too. Let's stop arguing about whether or not they should be able to do it. And let's say, well, the parents really want them to be able to do something different. So either we're going to get on this boat and we're going to offer something different, or we're going to just lose all these kids. And so what you saw a lot of, once it became clear that charters were happening, what ended up happening is schools began addressing or mirroring some of that. They began to provide options like, oh, you want a small class? Oh, you want single gender education? Oh, you want an art school? Well, we can do that. Come back. They spent so much time and energy fighting the idea that they should be able to do it. They so many, you got 40 kids in a class over here, you got 35, my kid is still being bullied, they're still not getting the resources, they're still, so I'm going to do this pod thing, and I'm going to see if that's a better fit for my kid. And here we go again, legislators are, you can't do that, that's not okay, parents shouldn't be able to have the rights. Or say, you know what, let's look at why the parents are actually saying this is what I want, and let's provide them with supports to, or let's mirror what they're doing and create this in our building so that you don't want to leave. Like, right. So
that's what happens with competition. That's right. What happens with competition. When you have a monopoly, you're going to get what you get. And so it's healthy.
Yeah.
And it's healthy for people to have options.
I 100% that there should be, I believe that there should be options. I believe that if you want to, the problem with some of these really, really powerful unions is that they want to hold on to ideas of the old, and it's going to be the death of them. Quite honestly, it's going to be the death of them. Yeah. What's going to happen, I think, is that parents are going to grab some of the parents that are most prepared right now and at the forefront are going to benefit the most. The parents who are who are unable to take advantage of some of the things that are going on, who aren't able to provide homeschooling opportunities for their kids, who truly don't, who are dealing with really harsh life circumstances and just don't know what to do and where to go. Those are the kids that unfortunately are going to miss out the most. And so my plan right now is to try to be to mirror myself after those charters that were pure of heart at the beginning of the charter movement, were knowledgeable about what works best for kids, listen to the population that they served, and are still around today, and have cemented and cultivated relationships where they don't have to worry about the next round of overregulation because they've earned themselves some flexibility within this really ever-changing system. And so I want to be able to do, like you, I want to create a very stable, lasting network of people who know what they're doing now, have a great vision in mind, are putting down the stakes and the foundation as we're watching this crap show unfold in front of us, so that when the dust is settled, the people who are ready to take advantage of everything this is going to bring can create a new system where for generations to come, just like the charter movement does, like there are now we're in the second generation of kids that have been educated with these charter schools. So in 20 years, we'll be talking about the second and third generation of kids that are being educated in micro schools and supportive homeschool co-ops and pods. So I want to be at the forefront of that revolution so that I can say this is a viable option 20 years from now. Here's how it was done. Here's how we can do it in a sustainable manner. And at that point, we are able to be influenced in our own lobbying cohort, whatever, so we can begin to go to the same meetings that some of these people are going to in Washington, and we can influence ourselves. There should not just be one or two people at the table saying this is how it should be done and here's a whole bunch of money, make it happen. We are going to create a movement of parent, family driven, we're the real people. Your corporations, we are real people. Here's what we want. And we have the force you have to listen to us. And if you don't, then we're going to not elect you anymore. And that's just, that's my dream. I don't know how to make that happen with my one little school in Dayton, Ohio, that's going to open on August 15th. But that's my goal. My goal is for us to be able to come together like you're doing and putting all these people together who are trying to do something different. And we're going to create a different movement. So we don't have to worry about why the unions are the way they are. We're not going to use the word union. We're going to be something else. I don't know what we're going to be. But we're going to come together and we're going to do our own thing, and we're going to create our own system and we're going to have the power to say, nope, unions, you're wrong. You people, you're wrong. Here's what it is. And you're going to listen to us. And then we're going to create what works for more kids. And that's the ultimate goal for me.
Yeah. Michelle, you're a visionary. Yeah. I'm not kidding. And I am too. We are, because we feel it. deeply. And as you were talking, I'm trying not to get emotional because I feel it so deeply. And I deeply want America's children to have the best that they can have. We are gonna, somebody has to step up. And believe me, you're not alone. When you say, I don't know how my little school in Dayton, Ohio is gonna, well, you're not alone. There's hundreds of these happening. We feel isolated in our little thing, but it's the more people I talk to, the more excited I get because it will happen. And in 20 years, we will see a transformed system, but it has to be, it's very grassroots. It's not going to happen from the top down. It's got to happen with each person making the decision, each family making the decision, each parent making the sacrifices, and somehow we're going to make this change. And I think that's just a great note to end on because that's the bottom line.
Definitely.
I cannot tell you how much fun this has been. I have loved hearing everything you had to say. And it's the dawning of a new day for America's kids. And it's very exciting. So thank you so much for visiting today. Please stay in touch. And I want to follow your success because you're going to be successful. I know you're going to stick with it until it happens.
If anybody is listening in the Dayton area and they're looking for it to be part of this new, or that you know somebody in the Dayton area, you're like, oh my God, I want my kid in that type of school. It's the TulsaLearningCenter.com. It's just, you just spell it out, the TulsaLearningCenter.com. And like I said, we're opening this year. The goal is for us we want to start small with ages pre-K. We'll take 4-year-olds up to about 7. We don't necessarily, but that's not a hard, fast model. If someone calls me and says, I've got a kindergartner, but a 3rd grader, and I really want them to stay together, that's totally fine. We'll work it out. And our goal is to just, this is the first step. And within the next 3 to 5 years, we want to have a network of these very small intentional schools that are very child focused, that create small intentional communities of learning and loving and empowerment for our families, because we really do believe, like you, that this is a better option for so many of our kids. So the TulsaLearningCenter.com. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Facebook. The school is the Tulsa Learning Center, but my company, Just Like Me, presents. And that's what I am on Facebook. That's what I am on Instagram. That's what I am on TikTok. Just Like Me presents. And because we have curriculums, and we have we have a curriculum, and we have books, and we have other things that we offer. So the school is just one of our offerings. So Just Like Me presents is how you find me on all social media, and the TulsaLearningCenter.com is our website.
Right.
So,
and you'll provide those links for me. We'll put them in on the YouTube video and on the podcast. So thanks so much again. Good luck with all you do.
Thank you so much.
All right. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.